Hello everyone. Today I will give a presentation about our paper titled Tensor-based multimodality feature selection and regression for Alzheimer disease diagnosis. I'm actually the first author of this paper, and I will represent our team to present this great work to you today. So we are so honored that our paper can be published by the BIOS 2022. So it's a little bit pity that I cannot present it in person, but I hope in next time, maybe in next year, we can present our work in person. So let's get started. So this is my today's outline. My presentation will contains 5 parts: background, introduction, method, experiment, and conclusion. So in the first part, background, I will briefly introduce the Alzheimer disease. So I think maybe you have now maybe you have heard about the Alzheimer disease, but you don't know the details about the Alzheimer disease. So I will introduce you guys what's Alzheimer disease and some interesting statistics about Alzheimer disease in the US. And in the introduction part, I will review the previous work in machine learning area targeted the prediction of the Alzheimer disease. And then we will jump into the method part. So in the method part, I will introduce our method, and also I will tell you how we solve this model. And then in the experimental results, I will show you the performance of our method, and also I will show you some visualized results. And then in the conclusion, I will briefly give you a wrap up. So in the background, so I think the first question coming to your mind is, what's Alzheimer disease? So in the left part of this slide, you can see that Alzheimer disease is actually a disease in the elder people. So the formal definition of the Alzheimer disease is that Alzheimer disease is one of the most common and incurable neurodegenerative diseases. So keywords here are neurodegenerative diseases. And this disease will result in progressive cognitive decline. So the progressive cognitive decline means that the patient will suffer the memory dystrophy gradually. And also the patient will suffer the behavior impairment, which means that in other words, the patient will suffer some movement functioning problem. And if you are in a severe cases, you can even die. So it's really so the Alzheimer disease is really a terrible thing. So, but I want to talk more about Alzheimer disease because Alzheimer disease is close to our daily life. For myself, actually, I think it's close to my life because 2 of my friends actually they have they actually have Alzheimer disease patients in their family, grandma or grandpa. And another reason that Alzheimer disease is important because actually the patients suffer a lot. So because the patients may be if they are in the severe status, they may forget themselves, and they even may forget the close relatives, such as their son or daughter. And also, Alzheimer disease is of great importance is that patients cannot take care of themselves, actually. So as I have mentioned before, because the patients will result in progressive cognitive decline and behavior impairment, so the patient cannot take care of themselves. So it's not a disease related to the patient themselves, but also related to the whole family. And I also the last point I want to mention in the Alzheimer's disease is that the Alzheimer's disease is actually not a normal aging process. It's not like the cancer, because let's take an example of cancer. For the cancer, actually in our normal in our human body, we produce the cancer cells every day. But in our young body, our body can help us to clear it out, right? But so we can understand that the cancer is a normal aging process, so it will always found in the elder people. But actually, the Alzheimer's disease is not a normal process of aging process. So that's the point that we should know. And actually, in the Alzheimer's disease, there are a lot of physical changes in the brain. So we can see these two images. So in the left part, you can see that the degradation in the from the perspective of the cell. So it's actually in Alzheimer's disease, actually the amyloid plaque will lead to the disintegrating of the micro tubules. And you can see that in the healthy brain. So this is a healthy brain, and you can see the normal the brain. And then if you are in the Alzheimer's disease, in the mild Alzheimer's disease, you will see the shrinkage of the different regions in your brain. And then if you are in a severe Alzheimer's disease, you can see even a big cavity in your brain. So more concrete example of the physical brain, you can see that here is a normal brain, and this is a moderate Alzheimer's disease. You can see that some shrinkage happens in your brain. And when you are in a severe status, you can see the big cavity in your human brain. So the shrinkage is not happening in the view of the cells, but also you can see it from perspective of the organ. So you can see from the physical brains. And for the Alzheimer's disease, there are actually 5 stages in the Alzheimer's disease. So the first stage is normal controls, and then it will be developed into significant memory concern, and then the early mild cognitive impairment, and then the late mild cognitive impairment. Finally, it will be developed into the Alzheimer's disease. So actually, I want to highlight the 5 stages of AD here because the stages of Alzheimer's disease is not reversible. And also, in my memory, actually, in the first 3 stages, the Alzheimer's disease cannot be detected. So that's also the reason why the Alzheimer's disease is of great importance, because it's difficult to be detected. And here are some interesting statistics of Alzheimer's disease in the US. So at first, there are more than 5 million people are detected. And there are 20, there are 20 more million are affected, and one Alzheimer's disease patient is developed per 60 seconds. And Alzheimer's disease is actually the 6th cause of death. So I remember the first two cause of death in the US is a heart attack and cancer, but the Alzheimer's disease is 6th cause of death. And it's the first cause of dementia among people aging more than 65. And the carrying cost per year is more than $100 million. So it's pretty high, right? And what I talked about is, I just want to highlight that the Alzheimer's disease is of great importance, not only in the medical area. And also because Alzheimer's disease is difficult to detect it in the medical area, so we need some some scientists in other area to help the medical experts, such as our computer scientists. So here are also some reasons. I call it the challenges in the diagnosis. But these reasons are also the reason why we computer scientists should join in. So first, as I have mentioned before, it's difficult to detect, but it's actually 10 to 5 years before the first sign of the clinical impairment. And the prevention is not possible. As I have mentioned before, it's reversible. And the diagnostic accuracy is so so how to say, the risks of false positive cases is really high. So actually the medical expert cannot stand with the risk of false positive cases. And actually the clinical resources are limited because you need to pay a lot to take care of the patients of Alzheimer disease. So these reasons, so these are also reasons behind why we need some computer scientists. And here are some machine learning aids diagnosis. So the advantages of using machine learning is that, so first we can give some early diagnosis, and even we can maybe we can prevent the disease of Alzheimer of the Alzheimer's. And also we can learn from rich information because the imaging data from the medical area contains a lot of information, and some information is difficult to detect it by human eyes. But we can use this imaging data to construct something like the brain network, because then we can build a connectivity in the human brains, and then we can use machine learning algorithms to analyze this connectivity and to learn some correlations between the human brains. And this connectivity or the correlations are difficult for the for medical expert to detect. And also the machine learning algorithm are cost effective than expert, right? Because if you develop a machine learning algorithm, it can be copied everywhere, and the cost is lower than the medical expert. And here are some existing methods in the machine learning area. So first, there are some feature selection methods. Actually, our method is one of the feature selection methods, but our method is different from the previous feature selection method in two aspects. So firstly, previous feature selection methods are more vector-based, and they cannot learn from some tensor data, but actually a lot of imaging data in medical area are in higher dimensional. So that's the reason why we need a model to build the tensor structure. And also these methods are single modality based, but actually in real world the data from the medical are multi-modality. So that's the reason why we propose the tensor-based multi-modality Alzheimer disease-based model. And also there are some methods based on PCA, but actually PCA method just project the feature from the original feature space to the latent feature space. So that's called a problem, is that the model has less interpretability because the latent feature space you cannot interpret these features, and also the PCA-based method cannot achieve the best performance. That's the reason why a lot of researchers resort to the advanced models. These advanced models contains convolutional neural networks and graph convolutional neural networks. So although these models can achieve the high accuracy, but actually there are no interpretability in these advanced models. So that's a problem, because the medical experts emphasize on the interpretability, because they rely on this interpretability to give the diagnosis. The reason why the convolutional neural networks and graph convolutional neural networks cannot give the interpretability is similar to the PCA-based method, because the convolutional neural network and graph convolutional neural networks will project the original features into a latent feature space, and you cannot give any interpretability in this latent space. And here are some materials we use in our paper. So just like the previous paper or method, we choose a participant from the Adderley database. So we filter the 692 participants. So there are 163 normal controls and 73 significant memory concerns, and 214 early MCI, and 149 late MCI, and 93 Alzheimer's disease patients. And actually, our imaging data is from 3 modalities. It's the structured MRI, and the FDG PET, and also the AV45 PET. So these are 3 modalities. And so you can see that we will group the voxels. This we will use some tools in the medical area to group the original voxels into the features by the size of 116 by 3. So here the 116 means 116 regions in our human brain, and 3 here means the 3 different modalities. So these are the original feature extraction process. But we also will use a K-n graph to construct the brain network. So here we use 2 different methods. So one is a modality fusion, and we will get 116 by 116 dimensionality. And also we will preserve the modality. So the dimension is of the size 116 by 116 by 3. 3 here means the 3 modalities, and 116 by 116 means the connectivity among these different regions, 116 brain regions. So here are the data pre-processing. And here is actually the our model. So our model is called the tensor-based multimodality feature selection. Actually, we only use regression models to model the prediction of Alzheimer's disease. But it's different from the previous regression model, is that the coefficients W and the original data X here are both actually the tensors. So X here is of the size 116 by 3 or 116 by 116 by 3. So it's a tensor. And here are our objective functions. So we use MSE, mean square error, as the loss function. And N here is the N different participants. So here the N equals to 692. Maybe we split the training data set and testing data set, so it's smaller than 692. And we will add the constraint to the components of our original coefficient. And here the WR is a unit rank defined based on the CP decomposition. So here are a lot of mathematical equations, but I can give you a basic understanding that the CP decomposition on a tensor is something like the SVD decomposition on a matrix. But actually there are a lot of different decompositions in the tensor. So we do the decomposition based on the CP decomposition. So if you want to know more details of this tensor decomposition, you can just search these keywords. And here are more details of our equation. So X here is original tensor data, and W here is WR here is a unit rank tensor. So the big R here, the capitalized R here means the total rank of our coefficient, and it is actually a hyperparameter. We can control it. And the Y here is a response value. And in our experiments, we choose the 3 different clinical scores: the severity of Alzheimer's disease and the MMC, and also the ADAS-COG medical scores. And here, lambda here is a regularized parameter. But this regularized parameter is observed in our algorithm, so it can be adjusted automatically by the algorithm. It's not a, you can understand it not as a hyperparameter. And here is a L1 norm. And the L1 norm is actually the origins of the sparsity. So our feature selection method will contain the original loss function plus the sparsity term. And actually, our tensor structure is from the model of the CP decomposition. And we rely on a stage-wise learning procedure. So this procedure is actually proposed by my advisor, Lifang He. So she proposed this method maybe 2 years ago, proposed this algorithm. And this algorithm is published on the Conference of Neurops. So it's published on the Neurops 2018. So if you are interested in more details about the algorithm, you can just search this paper. And so in this algorithm, it's called the fast stage-wise unit rank tensor factorization algorithm. So it's not too difficult. It's just to pursue the rank 1. That means we only solve the WR here. So in the previous, we have capitalized WR here. So, but we only solve the WR here. And then we will use this WR to compute the response residue, and then we compute another WR. So you can understand it as a divide and conquer strategy, and then we can get a global optimum for the solution of this equation of this optimal problem. And here are some experiments. And you can see in this figure that our proposed method can outperform all the previous methods. So these 3 are the, as I have mentioned before, it's the feature selection method. But the lasso and the elastic net are vector-based feature selection. Why the G lasso is better than the G lasso here is a group lasso. Why the group lasso is better than the lasso and the elastic net? Because the group lasso can also model some information about the tensor. So it's also a tensor structured model. But our model can still outperform the group lasso. And the PCA plus linear regression perform worst. And our model is not only can not only achieve the best performance, but also our method can achieve a better sparsity. So the sparsity is important. Why the sparsity is very important in the medical model? Because as I have mentioned before, the medical expert will rely on these sparsities to explain your model. So such as this model. So if you can predict the status of the Alzheimer's disease, and your model will have some weights in the hippocampus area. So that means the hippocampus is very important to predict the Alzheimer's disease. So this hippocampus is a kind of interpretability to your prediction. And you can see in this figure, our model achieves a better sparsity. So the green color here means the zeros in our model. And you can see the 3 previous feature selection method will have a lot of will have much more non-zeros in their models. And here are the visualization on the physical brain. So this visualization is similar to the previous, but we show this picture to some medical expert. You can see that also in the human brain, that our model can achieve more sparse structure, and the model will rely on some very important region to predict the Alzheimer's disease, such as the hippocampus and the left temporal pole. And this is the figure about the analysis of our hyperparameter. So in our model, there are two hyperparameters. The first one is the K. Because we rely on the KN graph to construct the brain network, right? So in the KN graph construction, we have a hyperparameter K. So we will adjust the key value, and then you can see that when we first make the key value bigger, the performance will be worse. But when we use the fully connected KN graph, so here the 160 means the fully connected KN graph, you can see the model achieve the best performance. For the sparsity, if you use, it makes sense when the key value is bigger, the sparsity will be more. It makes sense because the bigger key value you have, actually, the less non-zeros will in your connectivity matrix. So that's the reason why our model will learn a bigger sparsity. And also here are some influence of the R value. R is the rank of our model, and you can see that the bigger R you have, the performance will be better, but the sparsity will be worse. So the value of R is determined by the user to balance your model. If you want to achieve a good sparsity, and then you will lose some performance. But my recommendation is that you can set R equals to 60, from 60 to 70, and then you can achieve the best performance, and also you can achieve a not bad sparsity. So here is a brief conclusions. So actually in our model, we not only achieve better results, as I have mentioned before, we achieve an interpretable coefficient. And actually our model is based on multi-modality analysis. It's not only rely on the single modality. So the information across the modality can also be learned in our model, because our model is a tensor structure based. And the multiple modality will only add another dimension to our original data. And our tensor-based method can always learn from this high dimensional structure. And that's it. Do you have any questions?